We tend to think of finance as a hard science, a world of spreadsheets and formulas where you are guaranteed to make money. Back in the late 1920s, that absolute certainty was practically a religion. A booming economy convinced millions of Americans that the market was a rational machine that only went up. This headline from the Daily News captures the reality of October 1929. The headline reads, "Loss in stock collapse, 10 billion." The market didn't simply correct, it evaporated, plunging millions into sudden ruin. Among them was Abraham Germansky, a real estate developer who had bet heavily on the surge. On October 24th, he was seen tearing ticker tape into pieces on Wall Street before vanishing in despair. In a market this volatile, a sound spreadsheet cannot counteract the physical sensation of losing everything. The math remains the same, but the person doing the math has changed. But on October 29th, another investor arrived home to a terrified family. His name was Jesse Livermore. While reports of ruined speculators spread across New York, Livermore broke the news to his wife. He had shorted the market. He had made the modern equivalent of $3 billion in a single day. He was a financial genius who had timed the greatest crash in history, extracting a massive fortune while the rest of the world lost everything. Just 4 short years later, Livermore was completely bankrupt and buried in debt. He ultimately took his own life. Livermore proved he could master the numbers, but his demise shows that mastering the numbers is only half the battle. Success over the long term requires a different skill set, one that exists outside of a ledger. The trap Livermore fell into reveals a quiet truth about money. Getting wealth and keeping wealth are 2 entirely different skills. Getting money requires extreme optimism. You have to take risks, put yourself out there, and override the fear of failure to seize an opportunity. But keeping money requires the opposite posture. It demands humility, a constant fear of ruin, and a paranoid awareness that what you've made can be taken away in an instant. The brain struggles to switch between these states. We have an intuitive, fast-acting system focused on immediate rewards and social competition, the part psychologists call System 1. It is hardwired for the thrill of the chase, making it difficult to shift into a defensive posture once the money is in the bank. After his massive victory in 1929, Livermore's System 1 took over. The thrill of the win triggered an overconfidence bias that bypassed his rational judgment. He became convinced he was invincible and abandoned his margin of safety. He made larger, increasingly reckless bets until the debt finally crushed him. The very boldness that allowed Livermore to short the 1929 crash became his liability. He continued to bet with the same aggression that made him wealthy long after the situation required him to protect what he already had. To see how to survive that trap, look at Warren Buffett. While the public focuses on his stock picks, Buffett's longevity is the result of a rigorous commitment to survival. He navigated 14 separate economic recessions without panic selling his portfolio, without over-leveraging his assets, and without burning out. Buffett understands the math of compounding. It is a slow, counterintuitive force that only does its job if left entirely alone. This chart shows how exponential growth actually works. You can sit flat for decades with barely any visible progress before the trajectory curves into massive gains. It relies entirely on uninterrupted time. But a single catastrophic failure or an emotional decision to sell during a crash wipes out that timeline. You drop to zero and the math stops. By focusing on survival, you can absorb short-term volatility. The dips hurt, but as long as you stay in the game, the math keeps working. Consistent survival, avoiding the single mistake that removes you from the market, matters more than any individual flash of brilliance. Applying the survival skills of a billionaire to your own finances requires a shift in mindset. The primary goal shifts away from chasing the highest possible returns and toward becoming financially unbreakable. Achieving this requires what is known as a barbelled personality. This means holding 2 contradictory mindsets at the same time: an intense paranoia about the short-term risks, and an unwavering optimism about the long-term future. You accept that the next 5 years will be filled with setbacks, but you trust that over 30 years, the trajectory points up. That short-term paranoia is the shield that keeps you alive long enough to exploit the long-term growth. There is one final psychological trap that ruins investors: the ego and the man in the car paradox. When someone buys a luxury sports car, the motivation is rarely about engineering. It is a signal for social status, driven by a desire to be respected and admired. The paradox is that people rarely admire the driver. When we see a luxury car on the street, we project ourselves into the driver's seat. We ignore the owner completely. This exposes the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is highly visible. It's income spent to show off. But real wealth is hidden. It is the unspent money sitting quietly beneath the surface. The value of keeping your wealth invisible is found in what that unspent money actually buys. It buys options, flexibility, and a buffer against a future filled with unknowns. Money can buy a luxury car and the social status that comes with it, but its highest dividend is the ability to wake up every morning and control your own time.